Hello and welcome to the financial aid verification document review for the academic year 21-22. My name is Karla and I am a financial aid counselor for the Dream Center. And I'll go over, some of the verification documents and hopefully that answers some questions that you may have. Next slide, please. I'll quickly do an overview of the CADAA application, or the California Dream Act application that you are probably are all familiar with. The California Dream Act application, does have certain requirements, and as you can see here, one of them is you must meet the AB 540 status with our school at CSUN. You will also need to utilize your 2019 tax returns and or your parents, also your W-2s if you were employed, even if you didn't file taxes. If you are a dependent student, it will require a parent signature along with your signature, and I will go over the differences a little bit between dependent and independent students. The application does open every year, October 1st, so it does give you ample time to complete the application and make sure that you're getting all of the information in. And it does have a deadline of March 2nd. Now, this is a priority deadline. You can complete the application after this deadline or the March 2nd date. However, we highly encourage students to keep the March 2nd deadline as you may be eligible for additional funding. Next slide, please. Okay, quick overview of what is required for the application is the student financial portion is going to require, like I mentioned earlier, your 2019 taxes. So if basic information includes what was the tax filing status, single for dependent students, that's going to be single. If you're an independent student, could be married or filing jointly, head of household, married filing separately. For your parents of those dependent students, any of these four here would be options for tax filing status. And again, if you are not required to file taxes, you will only need the W-2s for that year in question, in this case, 2019. Next slide, please. Okay, the application does ask certain questions that will determine if you're going to be considered a dependent or independent student. Excuse me. First and foremost, or the most important one would be age. After a certain age is when students are considered dependent students. So for this application, if you were born before January 1st, 1998, and you answered yes, then that would deem you an independent student for this upcoming academic year. If you answer no and no to the following question, are you married? Then you are considered a dependent student. There are about 7 questions, excuse me, that factor in the dependency status, and it depends on what you're going to answer it. That's how the status, your dependency status, is determined. Next slide, please. This portion of the application is parent information. Similar to the student information, it's going to require your parents' tax information. So if they did file 2019 tax returns, you will need the information handy. Again, marital status for your parents, married, single, or married filing jointly or separately are options. If your parent does not have a social security number, then you will simply answer all zeros. Don't skip over it. Just simply answer all zeros. If you do leave it blank, the application, it's not going to allow you to continue. So that's also helpful information. Next slide, please. Continuing on with the parent information on the application is who lives at home, who are your parents financially responsible for or support 50% of the time. And the reason why I'm going over all of these is because it's going to tie in with the verification documents that our office we will request from you or is requesting as part of the verification process. So with that being said, the application does ask how many people live in the household, how many people are going to college. This will include yourself, your parents, any other children. And if you see here on the fourth bullet, on question 77, it does ask if this support, financial support, is being provided from July 1st of 21 all the way through June 30th, 2022. So those are things to keep in mind when doing the application and completing the verification documents. And again, I'll go into detail about it. I just want to give you a quick background and understanding of the application. The same thing applies with people in the household. People that are going to be attending college for this academic year. You'll also list yourself along with any other siblings that are attending college. Next slide, please. Continuing on with the parent portion of the application, it does require information regarding any assistance that they might have received, whether that's state assistance or federal assistance. For example, you can see the examples here. That's supplemental security income, free or reduced price lunch, so like lunch tickets at schools, maybe for your siblings, and temporary assistance for housing. If any of that was received, whether it was for 30 days or not, you want to go ahead and check that off. Some students are a little hesitant, providing that information, but it's not going to affect your application in any way or form. Again, here it's asking what form was completed. 1040 is our only form at this point. It's been changed so many times, but that's the only form that there currently is. You also, again, married, how did they file? Married filing jointly. And if they filed a Schedule 1, again, I'll go over what Schedule 1 is. Next slide, please. So I kind of went through that quickly just because you're a little bit familiar with the application since you have already completed it. Now, the reason why I wanted to go over that, like I said earlier, is because I want to make sure that you understand how is that connected to the verification process that we here at the financial aid office have. Pretty much a verification process is literally verifying the information that you provided on your application and information that you're submitting to us. That might have changed. Keep in mind, if you did your application as of October 1st and we're already in May or June, that might have changed. So, we want to have the most accurate information on file so that you're given the most accurate financial aid package for every student. So if you are selected for verification, and it is about 20% that gets selected for verification, you're going to be requested different types of documents. Not every student is being requested the same documents. Most of them are being requested what is called the 2021 verification worksheet for dependent or independent student. Again, this verification worksheet wants to simply verify the people at home and who's going to college. So who are your parents financially supporting during this academic year, and who's also attending college? Now, why are those two important? Because as we know, college is an expense. So your parents are providing for you. They're probably might be helping with tuition. At the end of the day, they're providing for housing for you if you're living at home, books if they're assisting you with books and supplies or some of those expenses. So these are the reasons why those questions are being asked. I would encourage you all to read these little links that are attached to the verification worksheet. And this is how it looks like. I'm sorry, I didn't mention that, but this is how the worksheet looks like. You will find it on your checklist items. When you log on to your portal, everything will be on there. So if we need taxes, if we need W-2s, you'll have a checklist on there. So I would, on this number 1, I would encourage you to read it. Sometimes you may be like, oh, reading all these documents can be a little boring, but it's also very informational and it's helpful. It will help you understand the process. And at the end of the day, you are the ones receiving this aid. So you want to know and you want to make sure you understand what it is that you are applying for and at the end receiving. As we know, the priority deadline is the 14th coming up. So we are right at that, hump of it. And we want to make sure that you all submit these documents as soon as possible. And what this means is that all these documents that or students will submit documents by the deadline, you're going to have enrollment protection guaranteed, and your file will be reviewed in a timely manner. Next slide, please. Okay, the form, this is a continuation of the form. So it does, if you can see here, ask for your information, your student ID, what academic year are we talking about, application type. You will have the option to scroll down and select the CADAA application. And if you notice here, same information I mentioned earlier, household information, who is part of your household, your parent's household. So you want to list yourself, like I said, your parent, any other parent, any other dependent that they have that they're financially responsible for. You want to make sure you include them. On the other side is where you're going to type in their name, their relationship, and their age. And if you have a sibling attending CSUN, you also want to include the sibling, your sibling with their ID number. Something important to mention is, if both of you and your brother or sister are selected for verification, or even a parent, if your parent is also attending, make sure your information should match. If it doesn't, what happens is we want to know what happened. Why is it different than your sibling if they're both, let's say, dependent students? So you want to make sure that you talk to your brother, your sister, and you guys maybe fill out the application together. If not, it does delay the process a little bit because we want to make sure we get accurate information, and we'll have to reach out to both of you. So I hope that makes sense to everybody, but the importance of accurate information is what we're looking for, accuracy. Next slide, please. Again, this is just a continuation of how it's going to look like once you enter everybody in the household. Excuse me, I couldn't find an example. I wanted to show you, of just like a sibling in the household, but I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. If you have another, a sibling, simply you would just mimic pretty much what your portion of it looks like, college attending CSUN and their ID number. Next slide, please. All right, this portion of the verification form is clarifying whether you file taxes or not. And it does have a parent option. This is a student option. So this student is a tax filer. Student did file taxes. If you notice on the second bullet, tax return non-filer, this would just mean that, complete the section if the student will not file or not required to file. So you might have worked, but you didn't meet that IRS threshold to file taxes. So there is a threshold for you to file taxes. So if you worked but didn't meet that, then you can check that off. The same thing would happen if for the parent portion, and I don't want to go ahead of myself, so we'll continue with this one. The student used a data retrieval tool, so they were able to transfer their information. That won't be, an option for you. You won't be able to check that that box, but in your case, you're going to check off the second one, and I apologize for having this box here. But the second box, the student wasn't able to choose the IRS retrieval. So this would be in the case that you did file. You would just bring us a copy of your 2019 taxes or the tax transcripts, which essentially are the same, except one will come from your tax preparer and the other one will come from the IRS themselves. Either one is fine, and it does give you instructions on how you can obtain either one. And again, I'll go over the differences of those two. Next slide, please. This is the parent information. If you're a dependent student, you don't have to worry about obviously the parent information. It would just have to be your information. And if you are married, your spouse's information. You would have to submit taxes for your spouse. For this student is a dependent student, like I said, so the parent did file taxes, and they automatically provided their information directly from the IRS. If your parent can do that, great. They can use the tool to link their taxes. If your parent cannot, again, just like in the same case of the student, provide us with a copy of their signed 2019 tax return or their tax transcript. Next slide, please. Okay, now I went over the pretty much a student that filed taxes, a parent that filed taxes. What happens if you didn't file taxes because you weren't required to, although you were employed? There is a verification of non-filing form that you can complete. That simply is a statement that you are signing that is saying, I am aware that I was employed, but I wasn't required to file taxes per federal guidelines per the IRS. And it does give you options to list the source of employment. So if you worked at Target or In-N-Out, you're going to put that would be your source and the amount. And you'll submit copies of those 2019 W-2s to our office. The same thing would apply for your parent. If your parent wasn't required to file taxes for 2019, but they were employed, then they would fill out the same form and list their sources, their amounts, and submit a copy of the W-2s to our office. Signatures are very, very important. So make sure that all these documents are signed. If not, then that does slow the process because we send back the document to you and it's delayed. Next slide, please. Okay, this is a sample of what a W-2 looks like. Again, this would be for your parent, you the student, or your spouse, if that applies to you. It's just, plain and simple. You may be already familiar with how that looks like. Next slide, please. Now, this is the 2019 1040 form. This is the only form that's being used for filing purposes or for tax returns. If you notice at the top, it says the form, the 1040, the year 2019, filing status. If you see above the red line, you are looking at the filing status. So you're looking at single, married filing jointly, married filing separately. Little noise in my background. Head of household or qualifying widower. So these, the reason why I'm pointing these out is because it does ask for that on the application. So it makes it easier for you to know where you're looking at that information. Next slide, please. Okay, this is the second portion of the form. In this big red arrow that you see, that's where we need the signature. A lot of the times that's where students don't, just submit it, or parents don't sign, and that's where we need to go back and resend that form to you. So if you're still looking for those documents and haven't submitted them yet, make sure that they're signed. If not, we'll return them and it will take a few weeks, as you already know. Next slide, please. Now, schedules. Schedules are additional. It doesn't apply to everyone. So it depends on what type of tax breaks you're getting, or what type of credits you're receiving. The best way for you to know if you filed a schedule or if your parents filed a schedule is to simply look through all those tax forms and look for the schedules or the page with schedules, and you'll see on the top it'll say schedule 1, 2, and 3. Make sure you're looking at the year 2019. Sometimes we have students submit 2019 tax forms, but the schedules are for 2020. So again, we'll send those back. So this is schedule 1. If your parent has it, go ahead and submit it. If you're unsure, I sometimes tell students submit all the paperwork because we will separate it for you. We will determine what is needed and not, rather than you kind of figuring it out and us sending you a notice saying, hey, you're actually missing this one. But it is, like I said earlier, it's good for you to know what it is that you're looking at that you need to submit to us. Especially if you plan to be in, your career is 4 years here, and if you get selected for verification for 4 years, then at least you're familiar with what forms you're going to be looking at. So this is schedule 1. Next slide, please. Schedule 2. So if you see this one's exactly the same, just schedule 2 is printed on the top. Next slide, please. And schedule 3. So those are the 3 that are for this year. They do change. Our tax laws change every year. So our forms tend to change. So for this year, this is how they're looking like. I believe last year they also look the same, but again, just keep that in mind. Okay, the dependent verification worksheet. This can be a little confusing sometimes for students. Sorry. The verification worksheet, you will be providing all the information about the household and whether you filed taxes or not. The last portion of it is pretty much just certifying all the information that you've told us. Is that true? Is it accurate? Yes. So this is the certification and signature. The verification portion of it, you're going to submit online. So, and the reason why I say this gets a little confusing is because sometimes students will print the whole form and submit it to us, but really all we need is for you to print this last page, which is the verification signature. The forms, like I said, the form that you filled out with the household information and who's going to college, that you're submitting online. So there is a button where you're clicking submit. And then once you submit, it will ask you if you want to print, and you want to print, so you can print this form. And this is the form that you'll be submitting to our office, the signature page. So there are cases where students will only submit the verification information itself, but not the signature page. So the file is still incomplete. We are still waiting for the signature page. Or they will print everything and they will submit the signature page, but they haven't submitted the forms online. So keep that in mind. The scenario is a little bit complicated and confusing maybe, but if you simply just read those small prints on each page that you're filling out, you're going to understand that you need to submit first and then print the signature page and submit to our office. So I hope I cleared it up a little bit, and it doesn't cause any confusion for you for this portion of the verification worksheet. Next slide, please. Okay, now this is the identity and statement of educational purpose. Again, not everyone's going to be selected for the same items. This statement is pretty much, and again, you want to make sure you read what you're signing and read everything that you're submitting to us, but this form is pretty much just wants to make sure that you are truly the person that you say you are and the person that is completing the application. So for this portion or this page, you're simply going to attest that it is you, your name, the date, and you are going to submit also a copy of your California ID or driver's license, some sort of ID that is pretty much saying, yes, this is who I am. You want to make sure you submit both of these documents together. If they're submitted separately, then the file is incomplete. And it will only be complete if you submit both of them together. You want to make sure you sign the document. Again, if it's not signed, it's not going to be complete. And I'm going to keep repeating that, if it's not signed, we're going to send it back. But that's okay, because I want to make sure that get it's in there, and you're remembering, okay, she mentioned signature so many times, so I want to make sure everything's signed. So again, you're signing this and you are submitting an ID with this. Next slide, please. Okay, the selective service registration, this only applies to males between the ages of 18 and 25. You do have to register for selective service. The website, and I should have written it down, but the website to register is ssa.gov. And you're simply registering for selective service. You will get a registration card. It is going to take a little bit longer. So if you haven't done that yet, I recommend you do that as soon as possible. Once you receive that card, you want to submit that card to us along with this selective service registration form. And in your case, if you fall under this male between 18 and 25, you're going to simply check off the first box that you have registered and you are a male between the ages of 18 and 25. That's simply what this is. It is a requirement, so you do have to complete it. We don't accept the registration anymore, the registration card anymore. Not the card, the application anymore. There was a time where that was accepted, but not for this academic year and moving forward unless that changes. So you have to make sure you get the card first and then submit it to our office. Next slide, please. Okay, so I went over pretty much of all the documents that are the most common and the ones that we mostly receive from students. There may be a special case where you need to submit, something else that I didn't mention. Again, every case is different, but those are pretty much what you're going to be seeing. If you happen to make a mistake, and for example, and I should have mentioned this earlier, if you happen to make a mistake on the verification worksheet and you accidentally put that you filed, but you didn't file, you can always write a statement to us saying, I made a mistake. I actually didn't file for 2019. I wasn't employed. It was a mistake. You sign, ID number, and submit to our office. So you can always rectify those mistakes. I'm bringing that up is because we do, that does tend to happen, and students sometimes tend to freak out and they just leave it as is and don't do anything. So we're waiting for a tax return. Remember, whatever you're answering is triggering that checklist. If you answered, yes, I worked and I filed, it's going to trigger, okay, so then that means we need taxes. We need your 2019 tax returns. So if you're not rectifying that mistake, we're never going to know. We're just going to wait for your tax return. So, to be proactive, you can call us, you can email us, and we'll help you through it. Just make sure you're on top of it. You don't want to leave any of the verification documents last minute. We prioritize the deadline. You can always submit after the deadline, but don't if you're going to take anything away from this workshop is don't leave anything last minute, because at the end of the day, it's going to affect you and your financial aid. So with that being said, any document that you need to submit, any clarification, for example, like I said, if you said, oh, I put that I filed, but I actually didn't file, you're writing a statement, you're submitting it to us. You have 3 options to submit to us. And, it's pretty plain and simple. We're really excited that this year you can upload your documents. We were kind of old school old-fashioned, and we're only accepting documents, of course, in person, but because of the pandemic, that's not possible. And that was the best way probably for everyone. You were already on campus, submit it, turn it into us. The other one was fax, but how many of us have faxes anymore, right? Fax was another option. It's still an option. If you can fax it, great, we'll take it. You can mail your documents, snail mail, like some people call it. But again, if that works for you, great, as long as we receive it. But I'm leaving the most important one and the most exciting one last, which is our option 1, uploading your documents through our confidential box. There is a link, and you're going to see that link on our homepage. You're also going to see the link on your portal, and you can simply upload your documents. Nowadays your phone has a picture. You take a picture, you can convert it PDF file, always please, and ID number, and upload it. So it's that easy, it's that simple. So I would say there's really no excuses for any of you or anybody to not submit these documents online or on time, for that matter, because it's very accessible. All of us have our phones with us every day. We're probably on it more than we should. So why not use it, to our advantage and submit the documents that you need. And again, if you have any questions, you can always reach out. I forgot to include my email on the PowerPoint, but you can look me up, or you can maybe email Daniela or Madison, and they'll give you my information. It's also on our website. And you can reach out to me, or you can speak to any of the counselors or the reps in our office, and we are happy to help with any questions that you have. I think that's it for this portion. Madison, can you check if there's another slide? Yeah, that's it. So that was pretty much it. And if you guys have any questions, again, feel free to call us.